Hi, folks. Um, so this week I want to explore something that quietly shapes a lot of people's experience about food and therefore has a really big impact on their weight loss journey and, and determines a lot of the time whether they actually continue and achieve what they want. And the idea that I'm going to explore is that food isn't a moral test. Now, on the surface, that might seem really obvious. But when you look at how people think about food, it's often anything but neutral. We talk about, I've had a good day in terms of eating, or I've had a bad day in terms of eating, or I've been eating something that's naughty and I shouldn't have been eating, or I've fallen off the wagon today. And over time, it's very easy for food to become tied up with something much bigger than just the fueling of our body. It gets connected to things like my self-control or my ability to be disciplined, whether I'm successful or failing, and it can even get tied up with my self-worth, how I see myself. So what I'm going to try and do today is separate these things out because I think it can be really important and make things so much easier for you. When food becomes a moral issue, it makes weight loss a lot heavier than it needs to be, excuse the pun. Um, and when the layer drops, uh, often things can really settle down and become much easier. So most people don't consciously decide to think uh, that in this way that it is about morals, it is about them. It just builds over time. And like everything in our life, we hear things as we're growing up, and then we might go on diets, or we hear people talking about diets, or we read about diets, we see things on TV, etc. We pick it up from conversations, and we pick it up from the way food is talked about culturally. So all the time, food plays a big part in our lives. So we're picking up information about it all the time. Uh, so when you think about, here's an example. When you think about something like sugar, and this food, a particular type of food, is high in sugar, then we connect to that. I shouldn't have it. Now, as soon as we start doing that, it becomes a very different experience because food now isn't just about the choice of what you're eating. It feels like a judgment because you're no longer just deciding what to eat, you're deciding whether what you've done is right or wrong. And that creates pressure. You see, once you um, moralize about food, eating has emotional consequences. See, if you label a food bad, then eating that food doesn't feel neutral anymore. If you've eaten it, it feels like you've messed up. And then when you've messed up, that tends to feel like guilt. And for most of us, guilt has a very predictable pattern. I've blown it now. Oh my God. Um, I might as well just carry on eating them things. I'll start again tomorrow. All of that kind of thoughts go through our minds. And that's when the real difficulty begins because it's now not just about what you ate, it's about the story that follows. And from that story, that one biscuit becomes the whole packet. One moment becomes the whole evening. And it's not because the food was so powerful, but it's because of what we attached to it, what it meant to us. Now, there's actually another layer to this as well. When food is labeled as bad or off limits, we then tend to create a set of rules. I mustn't eat that. I can eat this. I'm not allowed that. I'll be good this week if I follow these rules, these foods. And now, on the one hand, that might sound like discipline, but psychologically, something else is happening. It's creating an internal resistance. We wanting to push back. And that's where the cycle of restriction and overeating often comes from. And it's not about a lack of willpower, but it's actually about a reaction to pressure. Now, one of my clients put it really well when she said, once food stopped being naughty, I stopped rebelling against. That's really interesting. That was a very powerful insight because when food loses that moral charge, it also loses some of its pull. It becomes a choice again rather than a battle. You're not at war with yourself internally. So, what does it look like when you see food more clearly? The first thing to recognize is that it's not about pretending that all foods are the same, because of course they're not. Different foods affect us in different ways. They affect our hunger, our energy, our satisfaction levels. They'll even, affect how our body actually feels. But that's very different from saying one food makes you a good person and another food makes you a bad one. Because neutrality sounds more like that's something I chose. That was enjoyable. That didn't satisfy me as much as I thought it would. That left me feeling quite full or quite sluggish or quite energized. Now, the thing about all of those kind of statements, you're not judging yourself. You're observing. You're discovering information. And that's a completely different place to operate from because the information could be useful. But when you're judging yourself, you're just creating pressure. And this is really at the heart of the problem. Better choices don't come from beating yourself up. In fact, the other way around. When you feel under pressure, when you are beating yourself up, you will often make poor choices. But when that stops, when things settle and you see things more clearly, you'll say things to yourself like, oh, that food didn't really hit the spot. You'll notice it. Um, or I was just tired there when I made that choice. Or that particular food left me wanting more. I don't feel really satisfied. Now, all of that information is very helpful. And there's absolutely no need to criticize yourself. All you need to do is notice. And it could be, oh, that food worked really well. That filled me up. Now you're learning. Now you're building a relationship with your own experience. And from that place, it becomes much easier to regulate what you're doing. It becomes much more natural. It's not forced. It's much simpler. So, from a practical situation, imagine this. Someone eats a couple of biscuits in the afternoon. Um, it's a familiar pattern. It's an old pattern. Now, what then might show up is that old thinking, I've been bad, I've ruined it. I might as well finish it off and I'll start again tomorrow. And that in turn leads to more eating. Now, imagine the same moment, but without the judgment. Okay, so I chose those. I was probably a bit tired. They were nice, but I'm noticing I'm still a bit unsatisfied. That's it. No drama. And because there's no drama, you don't spiral. You have clarity. And when you're in clarity, you can make much, much better choices. So one of the easiest places to start this is language. Listen for your language. Listen to what you're saying to yourself. I've been bad today. That was naughty. I shouldn't have eaten that. I've ruined it. the thinking that you have will be very common to you. But listen for the judgments. Now, one thing that's really important here, and people often make this mistake in like minds, is they think they're going to convert negative thinking to positive thinking. That's the way to do it. But it's not. It's just see it as neutral. Don't try and shift it round. Just see it as it was. That's what I chose. That was enjoyable. That wasn't enjoyable. Now I know how that feels. Now, these can be really small shifts, but over time, they create a surprising amount of space. So the idea here is food isn't a moral test. It's nothing about us. You're not good for eating one thing, you're not bad for eating another. Food is just food. It's fuel. And some of the choices you make will support you better than others. And it's noticing which ones support you better and which ones don't. But none of those choices actually change who you are. And when that really starts to land, the whole experience of eating tends to become much calmer. There's less guilt, less rebellion, less all or nothing thinking. And then better choices seem to happen naturally. So over the next few days, you just might want to notice your language. Notice whether you're judging or observing. Um, Catch yourself if you're turning food or your choices of food into something personal. Just keep it simple. That's what I chose. And what do I notice now? Really, that's it. Nothing more is needed. Hope you found that useful. Cheers, folks.